Welcome to the Love Story Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Green, where we are capturing the magic of every love story. Welcome to the Love Story Podcast. We have in studio today, do you want to be called Dr. Tom Johnson or Tom Johnson or the Johnsons? What do you prefer?
I think in a marriage situation, I'm just going to call myself Tom today.
Tom today. Okay, we have Tom and Tami Johnson. So for a little bit of background, I know you, Dr. Tom, through being in networking and all of that kind of stuff. You've helped me through a number of eye problems, scratching myself with a pineapple. My husband scratched himself with a plant. My daughter had metal in her eye. So you're kind of you're a family hero in our life.
The guru that can do just about anything that doesn't involve anything besides this area of the body.
Yes. Yes. And Tami, so I obviously know you through knowing Dr. Tom. So, or Tom, yep. Through my friend Tom. So we are here to talk about the love story. So you guys are two of my favorite people, a marriage that, and I'm not just saying this just because you're on my podcast, but you guys are.
Just gonna say that for the next people too.
How do I want to say this? Kind of like a benchmark. You're a benchmark marriage. You guys have been together, and you do the blended family thing and all of that. So don't let me be the person to kind of tell your story. You guys, where do you want to start? What's kind of your background? Where do you want to go?
Our two oldest boys were in Cub Scouts together. They're 30 this month, so
2003.
Yeah, 2003, and we met through Cub Scouts when they were in Scouts, and I guess I found him charming and intriguing, good looking. I was married at the time. We were just friends with each other, and I think you were newly single. Guess got to know each other just as friends.
And so Cub Scouts would be, how old are the boys? Okay, and for context too, the boys are names, ages, how far apart does everybody?
They're Alex and Mitch, and they were at the time probably about 10, I'm thinking, 9 or 10. And like Tami says, I was in the process of being divorced from my son's mom. And that was awkward because in our conversation when we'd meet at this first encounter that her family and my soon-to-be dissolved family met, they'd say, I'd say, well, this is my, and I didn't really, that was such a weird thing for me to even talk about that. How do I even introduce this person that I'm about to not be with? And she chimed in without even missing a beat, soon-to-be ex-wife. And I'm going, so that was my first introduction to Tami and her family.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got to know each other, and I think the oldest were 13 when we got married in 2009, and Monty was 8, and he's now turning 25.
Yeah, and her son and my son were actually good friends, and so in the course, as we got further into knowing each other, about that, realizing that this was going to be something we weren't going to be able to walk away from, I thought for sure.
The courtship?
Yeah, courtship, yeah.
Okay.
And I thought for sure this is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, because these two boys are going to be best friends. It's like they're going to be brothers now. It's like they're going to be walking around hand in hand, all jolly and jolly. And then as they met, and then they became a family, it was just the opposite. You know, they all of a sudden realized, well, wait a minute, we used to be friends, now we're brothers, and it's sort of awkward. And so they kind of ventured away from each other for a time, which is even more ironic because now today, now they're having their 30th birthday in about 2 weeks.
And they're celebrating together.
They're celebrating together, singing, doing music together out in California.
Yeah. So I remember my son, he said to me, "You guys ruined it when you got married. We used to be able to have sleepovers. Now he's just here all the time." So that kind of backfired on us, but we made it through the blended family. Now Christmases, I would say the last few, we've had an absolute blast. We just took them to Costa Rica this last winter, the 5 of us, and we had a ton of fun. It was an amazing vacation.
Free, unlimited drinks and food. Doesn't hurt.
Yeah,
situation. It's amazing how families come together.
Yes,
in that
exactly. Over food and unlimited food and alcohol.
But yeah, I would say. So yes, we met through Cub Scouts.
Okay, so you're kind of like, you see this guy across the room and you're like, okay, he seems like kind of a cool guy. And at this point in the Cub Scouts in the early stages, do you have your clinic at this point, or are you still working for someone else?
Oh no, I think at that time.
Don't.
No, I don't. I think at that time I was working for commercial place.
Sure.
And so I think at that time, and then we were chatting about this before, and during that stage of my life, the one thing I think that people need to understand in their relationships, especially blended relationships, separations and bringings together have different effects on different people. You know, a lot of people are cautionary to you that when you're separating and divorcing in a situation, the last thing you should do is go out and try and cover up your pains with
anything.
the
Yeah.
things. Yeah. And of course, I don't have a lot of good listening skills, and so I found that those kind of things seemed to be a lot more appealing to me at the time.
Sure.
Which I think that's why it was kind of funny, because I think at this time when we met, or as we got to know each other, I think I was still in that frame of mind, and
years.
so for a long time, and I think it was harder for me to disallow that to control or be part of my life.
Sure.
And so I think a lot of people don't realize that different people have different coping mechanisms. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it takes a while to mature too. Like, it's kind of that whole thing. This is what I appreciate about having another conversation with another blended family, as my husband and I are also a blended family, where it's like there's extra, and we've had other people on, and Reva had her story of a blended family. Hers was a little different, where she was the only one with a child. So then you guys are coming together with kids, in separate relationships and all of that, and having to different parenting style at, your ex's home and, homes and whatever, and then having to come together. And now you've got essentially 4 different parenting styles that you have to work together in your new, now blended family. So
we were lucky in that way, I think, in the fact that my son's mother lived always within about a mile of me. Tammy's kid's significant other at that time lived about a mile away. So a lot of people, we've talked to so many people that have families that, they've got such a long ways to go, and, they see each other once every month or once a year, whatever, and we were like, if the kid forgot the book at one place, they could come over and get the book at ours, and vice versa. And I think that made it at least a more tolerable, and more, you want to make it work for what's best for the children's situation.
Yeah. And so you guys you're kind of coming in kind of halfway through as you're joining your family, kind of coming in halfway through their growth into adulthood and all of that stuff. They're still kind of in that kid stage. So what was kind of as you guys are trying to date and get to know each other, what was kind of that were you upfront right away with the kids? Hey, we're dating, we're doing this whole thing, I'm going to go on a date with, Alex's mom or whatever.
My oldest struggled with it more so than my younger child. He was 12 or 13 at the time. And I think boys have a tendency to be very protective of their moms. And I think at that point in time, well, probably even now, no one would be good enough for me.
Yeah.
And so I think you guys kind of butted heads for a while, and he was very acutely aware of how I'm being treated and how I'm being spoken to, and just eye on you very much so, I would say.
Yep.
So
and that was as anybody's family would have in that
teenagers
situation.
are not easy.
Oh, yeah.
The teenagers they don't hold anything back. I think she's right. There was a lot of moments of animosity in probably him and mine, until he was probably out of high school. And I remember quite honestly, I remember the first time as an adult, he was probably in his mid-20s or so during COVID. We went down to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and for just because COVID existed everywhere except for in South Dakota. You could go down there and just hey, let me drink a drink from you, and let me cough on you, and no big deal.
Yeah.
So we decided during that time, hey, wouldn't it be fun if her and I and Alex went down to Sioux Falls and did some things? We stayed there for a weekend, and I remember coming back, and like I said, that was less than 5 years ago.
A changing point, maybe.
I remember coming back, and I sat with him in the driveway, and I looked at him, and I looked him right in the eye, and I said, 2-3 years ago, this would not have been a possibility.
Sure.
And I said, I'm glad for you and for me that this is the beginning of maybe a transition. And we've become quite close now in the last 5 years.
Wow. So Alex lives in the cities. Correct me if I'm wrong.
He's in Bloomington. Yep.
Okay. And then Monty, who is in California? Mitch?
Mitch.
Yep.
Mitch is in California, and Monty lives
St. Paul.
St. Paul. Okay, so your boys are down in, and then Mitch is out in California. So when did they decide that they were all going to kind of flee the central Minnesota area?
My oldest just went down to the cities a year ago.
Okay.
He was living in the St. Cloud area up until then. Monty left 2018 when he graduated. And Mitch went to California in 2013 when he graduated.
Yeah, Mitch.
Yep.
Mitch came to me and he graduated in 13, and about midway through, when people are looking for colleges, he said, "I think I'm going to go to school in San Luis Obispo." I go, "What the hell is that?"
Okay.
Can I say that on the air like this?
Yes.
Okay. And anyway, so he decided he wanted to go out there. He'd made some research and stuff, and I think there was a time that he said, my family has always stuck pretty close to the Minnesota area. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm probably going to be the first that sort of moves away. Mm-hmm. And I don't think he was telling me because he was asking me if it was okay. I think he was telling me because he wanted me to feel comfortable with that. And I sometimes wonder if he moved away to just begin anew, mm-hmm. or just because he wanted to just hated snow. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So what was, from a empty nester perspective, how did that kind of change? Because I assume all the kids kind of left right when they graduated and they moved out or did their kind of thing. So what was that like for your relationship to be the kids are kind of what brought you together in the Cub Scouts? How did that change your relationship, or did it change it? What was the...
Oh, I got this one. Yeah. So when I was...
talk about Naked Thursday?
Yeah. So I went down to a church basement in southern Minnesota with my mother and a bunch of priests.
I love that it's a church basement.
Yeah. It really adds to the story.
Yeah.
And there was some guy who'd just become an empty nester. And I said, "God, what..." My kids were, young at the time.
Home.
And I said, "What is that like?" And he says, "You know what I love about empty nesters? Naked Thursdays." And he said that in front of my mom and the priest that was down there and stuff like that. And I've used that line so many times. I thought, why not put it on the air?
Yeah.
And so I think I would say, and I think I may have spoken to you or some other folks about this before, that I know that there's a struggle that people can have in their relationships and, with themselves, with their spouses, with their friends, and with their family members. But I really feel that, God, I couldn't have picked a better person to have these times of freedom and growth and enjoyment and happiness with. But I think that when you're with your kids and there's just you're taking them to ball games, mm-hmm. and you're doing all this stuff, and you have so many things going on, you don't have time to appreciate who you are. And if you could just step forward for an hour one day and just think about, but if I can just get to that stage, and it's a pretty rewarding situation. And I don't know if other people talk about that as much, and maybe some people don't like it because when their kids are gone, they're really at a loss for what to do with each other.
I think a lot of people lose track of each other during the distraction. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we kept it together or we found our way back together, but it's been a nice season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was harder for me probably initially when they went off to college than it was for you.
She was crying in the foreground. I'm in the background going,
Naked Thursday.
Only because that was told to me 10 years earlier, and I kept looking forward to that day.
Yeah. But I probably was a bit of a helicopter mom.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I miss them terribly sometimes. I like seeing them on the regular, but I love the amount of laundry we have. I like that we can just eat cereal. Mm-hmm.
For breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
Yes.
And just our house is ours.
Yeah.
It's been nice.
So when you're going through that transition and everything, and I mean, it's kind of like a pressure point, mm-hmm. My son just graduated, so it is that all of a sudden you just kind of have this weird what do I don't know how to, I'm not parenting you anymore, kind of, but you're also not really grown, mm-hmm. So you just kind of have to take a step back, and it is that a little bit more, because I think we all get in that mindset as parents, and then, you know, trying to be in the relationship of like, okay, but when we get to the next phase, we can just get through this phase, and then when the kids are gone or whatever. But then it is that, like, if you aren't focusing on the relationship in the meantime, you get to that phase where there's no one else to kind of distract you from this other person that's across the table crunching on their cereal too loud, and you're just like, what did I even like about you in the first place?
Everything except for your breathing, your chewing, and your snoring. That's all good, but now I notice all three of those on top of the
And
rest.
the fun part is we slid into pandemic about a year after Monty went off to college.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we had the empty nest followed by pandemic, and Tom had an ongoing
Phrase.
quote or phrase. Well, here we are again, Tom and Tammy, Tammy and Tom, like day in,
Yeah.
day out.
Well, and Butters.
Yeah.
Butters is there too.
Thank God we got the
Thank
cat.
God for the pets. Probably saved our marriage, huh?
So what was that like going through? Because that is kind of like a momentous, to be empty nesters, and then to now it was you and I together, and now it's you and I together on lockdown. Like, how did you, what was the, like, how did you guys find space from each other? How did you guys figure out ways to come together? What was kind of the glue during that stage?
Well, we still have a 5-bedroom house, so maybe that was a savior.
There's downstairs
We
and
haven't
upstairs.
downsized yet.
The downstairs was typically referred to as the doghouse. At the
Sure,
time.
sure.
That was my domain. Oh, swing back to, because I certainly, if my son ever has the privilege or unprivilege of listening to this, I don't want him to ever think that like I was sitting there cheering like, hey, thank God my kid's gone, because I've talked to somebody recently who let their kid had their one and only child go, and the dad broke down and cried, and I've told Tammy this, that I flew into LA and then drove him up to San Luis, and then the whole time we were there, it was like just regular stuff, doing this, going and touring things, and then all of a sudden they said, okay, the parents can go home now, and I remember we looked at each other, and it's like we didn't know how to react. Did we hug each other? Do we say goodbye? So it was just weird as heck. And then I drove home and literally drove 3 hours down to LA, and I was crying. And I wrote songs about, and I don't even know what they were, but I'm sure they were super silly,
Sappy.
but monumental. And all of a sudden, all these emotions swelled up in me too. And so I think that it goes without saying that most parents will have a feeling of loss. And at that time, I wasn't even thinking about that I got to come back to that privilege of having an empty home. So Mitchell, if you're listening, there was a song there. I'm sure if you get me enough surveys, maybe you'll get it out of me someday.
So we'll go back to kind of when you guys were like in the courtship stage, what was like, how did your families, were they open and receptive to the fact that you had both had dissolved marriages, and then now you guys are kind of coming together? Or was it like, was there resentment from parents, or like, did everybody just kind of slide in, going from, because you had kids to appease, and then you also had parents to appease?
Right. I think my parents were nice to you, kind to you. I remember when I was getting divorced and talking to my parents, I think I got married very young, and in my mind, letting people down, disappointing people always was a huge issue to me. And so I think for a number of years it was, how many people is this going to affect? How many people am I going to disappoint? Not necessarily putting myself first, but thinking about that. I remember saying something to my dad, and my dad saying, it's your decision. And sometimes parents aren't going to necessarily understand or agree or might be disappointed, but it's your life to live. So I think sometimes parents have a greater understanding of what you're going through than they have years on you. And sometimes you forget that, what they've been through and the wisdom that they might have under their belt. You just think that you're the first person ever going through something, like it's this novel experience. But, a lot of times it just isn't the case.
But were you the first person in your family to have a divorce, though, or no?
My brother.
Oh, so I was the first person in my family. So and that's why, and I said earlier that I didn't know how to react to that when I was introducing myself to her and her family at that time for the first time. It's just not a word that came out of our family's mouths. And so it was awkward for me to have to go through that. And so I think they went through a lot of, and I had like 5, maybe 6 years of being single, being a bachelor, or being a single dad, I guess I call it. So I had plenty of time to get into that stage where by that time, when, and of course, Tammy, you look at her and everybody, she's a very lovable person. And so my family adapted to her very quickly. And I think it was an easy transition for her to come into our family values. And of course, my mom just said, well, as long as she wants to get married in the Catholic Church, that's okay. Which is, we really should go into the story of that, but I don't want to downplay the faith that I was raised in.
But it was kind of cute that his mom was just really confused living in central Minnesota why he couldn't find a Catholic girl.
Yeah, right.
So
yeah.
In that respect, I might have been another letdown.
Right. But even my mom, who I would say is way more perceptive than I ever will be, when she was still alive, she even on her deathbed, she said, Tammy loves you, I can tell. And that was and for her to be able to say that at that fragile part of her life was perceptive and heartfelt.
You've touched on the fact that your mom has passed away. Is your dad still living? No. Okay, so both your parents have passed away. Are your parents still alive, Tammy?
My mom.
Okay.
Is still around. Yep.
And were you together through the loss of your 3 parents?
His mom and my dad.
Okay.
Yep. So.
Okay.
But my dad died before we knew each other, I think, almost. Yeah, so I think it was hard it was hard, but I think when people successfully integrate families, especially whether they're in their first marriage or 10th marriage, they have to be able to be willing to allow the love of each other to flood on them, and they have to allow the love of another family to affect them. And it can be hard, especially because families are not alike. And I'm sure that all of us that are listening to here are going to agree that our in-laws, as great as they are, couldn't drive you crazy, and our in-laws, as crazy as they are, can really teach us something about ourselves.
Yeah. I like to hear that, because I know that you speak very highly of your mom. I even just like in the one chair that I sat on for, no pun intended, had for a number of years, that was your mom's chair and whatever. Even that was just, it's funny how like those little things, just the way relationships kind of continue to affect us in our life. And you can tell that you definitely revere your mom. Was that, Tammy, for you, was that like something, because I know there's always that like to try and slide into a relationship or anything like that. How did you guys get along? Did you butt heads? Was it like, what's best for Tom, she knows what's best for Tom, and now you're just kind of like, ugh, rolling your eyes? Or
I could see the love that she had for him so much. You were her baby. And so I think, he was the cream of the crop, the prize. And I think she was okay with me because she knew I felt the same way.
Sure.
That he was my prize, that I loved him, adored him. And I think she was just glad to have somebody in his life that felt the same way. So, yeah.
And I think that's what we all want for our kids.
I think it's hard to see anything less than that.
We can feel something good about their friends, and we can feel something not good about their friends, but we can't really intervene, because certainly as children, they will respect what you say, but if it's not what they want to hear, that can backfire.
Oh,
and you know that from especially your ages of your kids and stuff. So I think that it's nice to know that she felt an admiration for Tammy, that she could see that I had that as well. Yeah.
Talking then, you guys got married in 2009, and the boys, were they a part of the wedding? Were they like, call us after the honeymoon? How did they?
They were part of the wedding. Yep. Mine walked me down the aisle. But yeah, they were all there, and it was a nice day.
I was going to like really throw her under the bus and say, yeah, my kid was my best man, and we put her kids as flower boys or something. And it was an interesting day. I mean, and I think as a florist, a person who does stuff in this arena, it's almost a shame to say that I have to, I opened my office in my
Senior?
Wow.
We opened
February.
your office in May,
May,
and
yeah.
we got married in July.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had gone from having a decent, okay amount of money to not making a lot of money during that stage of my business. And so I said, I want to get married, but unless I'm digging into my funds, I'm not going to have a lot to provide here for this.
Yeah.
And so,
And coming from the financial world, I wasn't about to say, hey, yeah, we should cash in 401ks to get married.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
so we, and actually, boy, I tell you what, if anybody does need a inexpensive wedding planner, you might want to contact this gal, because I swear she said that our total budget for all in everything was about $4,500, and you'll probably have to ask for a fax for that, but I don't know what it was, but I put her in charge of it, and you got to tell them the story about your dress. I think people need to know that I know I see a lot of really fancy dresses out there, and you're talking to a doctor and a finance person, but during a certain stage of your life, you just don't throw out, get $15,000 dresses.
You had a lot
So
of equipment to buy.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you should probably tell them what you spent on
I
your
had
wedding
a
dress.
$40 dress from Target. Target did a wedding line that year,
Wow.
and I had a $40 dress from Target because I don't think their wedding line went over very well.
Oh,
People
yeah.
didn't know to go online and even look for it. So it was on clearance. It was beautiful. It was a satin column wedding dress that buttoned up the back. And I
Wow.
went to David's Bridal and got a sash for it, which I think was another $40, double the
Wow.
price.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Now, had I known you at the time, we probably would have upped our ante a little bit just to get some decent flowers. But I think we
but
did
it was a
good.
beautiful day.
Yeah.
Where did you guys get married? Was it around here?
We got married at St. Francis.
Okay.
And we had our reception.
St. Francis Catholic Church. Yes.
Yes,
At a
yes.
nice Catholic wedding.
And then the VFW is no longer around.
It became Roy's place,
Yes.
Which is now
Urban Moose, and now it's Guadalajara.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that used to be the Legion, and we went there, and I asked the guy beforehand, hey, you don't mind if we bring some of our own stuff? And then he goes, no problem, no problem. The day of the wedding, his tune turned completely, and my family would come down with me, and we'd bring some, hey, we got some fresh fruit, and he just went ballistic on us. And it was so funny because my sister at the time came down with me the day of the wedding, and she also then said, after we'd already gone through this little dilemma with this guy, that, hey, maybe we could bring some of our own stuff down. I looked at her and go, shh, don't say anything.
Smuggle it in
And
under
then
your dress.
he yeah. So, yeah, it was not a very fancy reception. And as a matter of fact, I'm really not even any more proud to say that after everybody kind of cleared out around 11:30, we went over to the Benton Station in our wedding dress with my high
I
school.
think we sang karaoke.
Sang karaoke at Benton Station. Yeah.
Wow. That's what a nice little way to wrap it
Yeah.
up. So when you saw Tammy coming down the aisle, did you cry?
I said, A, what am I getting myself into again here? And B, how in the hell did I get this lucky to get this person that's following up towards me, coming towards me? And I was very tickled. Oh, and you gotta tell her about I had been working because I'm a theatrics person.
Sure.
Not as good as some of you folks, but
I know where you're going.
I presented with her the fact that I'm going to do a presentation, and you better let yourself know people are going to cry for this because I put a lot of thought into it, and I've done that hundreds of times for other things, and usually I have a great story, but I can't read it very well. So I read it, and people are like, yeah, whatever. But she the whole time kept
He told
saying,
me repeatedly that this is going to be a tearjerker. This is really going to bring the emotions.
Really, yeah, building it up.
So
I was like, oh my gosh, the pressure. Like, what am I going to
Yes.
deliver? Because
Yeah.
it was just us. We didn't have a best man, maid of honor, going to do a speech for us. So it was on us to like say something.
go ahead. This is your idea, so you should do it.
So I was like, where do I go with this?
Yeah.
How do I match this? I don't know that I can meet it on the level of, emotion tearjerker. So I decided to reach out to Bonnie the Barfly.
Oh, yep. Uh-huh.
And so unbeknownst to him, I gave her all of this info. And I said, let's have you show up during the reception and crash it.
During your part, you were given a little speech.
I started giving a speech, and she came in like she was a jilted
Ex-girlfriend.
former girlfriend, And she
remember.
comes stumbling in with her big drink.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If you've ever seen her
dress all
comedy,
riding up and
bad
makeup all over her
Yeah,
face.
yeah.
I was like, where's Tom? He and I have a debt to settle.
We have some unfinished business. Yeah. So, and I had no idea. I thought everyone in central Minnesota knew who Bonnie the Barfly
yep.
was and her various characters and has seen her. I underestimated that some of our neighbors and
My mother.
obviously his mother would not know who Bonnie the Barfly was and would think this was a real thing. Like looking at her, I would not have thought like this is but because I know it's a comedy.
Yeah.
So we find out after the fact that some of our neighbors were considering like, how can we take her down? Like until they realized that it was
An act.
Yeah.
My mother did not know either.
And your mom was like shrinking in her chair, thinking it was an actual former girlfriend.
Knowing my mother and the history that I've had in her presence, she probably said, I can't believe Tom pulled this one off again, too. Like, he couldn't even clear up his messes bad enough to get his wedding day cleared of all the stuff. And we joked about it afterwards. But
How long, like, was it like within minutes of like Bonnie doing her like, okay, just kidding, whatever. Like, at what point did you run over to your mom and go like, oh my gosh, mom, please, like,
I don't think I wasn't
anyone
thinking.
did.
I was really quite honestly astounded and a little frustrated that she outed me or she bested me. My speech meant diddly squat at that stage.
do you remember any highlights from your romantic tear-jerking speech?
I think I asked my family to stand. Not all. I think my family stand, her family stand, and I had them all standing. And I said, I want to make you this promise today that I'm going to be good to this person.
Oh.
And and that lasted about 3 days, and then
Did anybody cry?
Probably us more than
yeah, probably yeah.
And then Bonnie comes crashing in, slipping and stumbling and taking people out.
yeah. So it was a nice wedding.
I think that looking back at that though, when I had asked these family members, hers and mine, to stand up and make these outside of the church promises, I think I knew a lot about myself. No, I take that back. I think I knew very little about myself at that time because, I think at that time it was apparent that, it was unapparent to myself that there was still things in my past that was affecting who I was and who I was going to be. And, I think Tammy will tell you that I've been a pretty good fellow for her in her relationship. But, as a man, we do things sometimes. And I think it's important to know that the growth that you have in your marriage it's so important, not just for each other, but in yourself too. You got to know who the hell you are if you're going to have any chance in making this relationship work, because you're 50% of the success and you're 50% of the problem. And I think I've seen that in other relationships, other marriages where they made it or didn't make it. And I sometimes I look at people and I shake my head. I don't know how the hell they're still together. But I think knowing what it is you have to offer in the relationship and knowing who it is you are and then making a choice.
Sure. How do you reconcile that where you're like, because you've both of you have kind of gone through the gamut of having a marriage and then now having this marriage. Like, how do you reconcile that? Where, like, do you feel like any kind of, like, any regret or any resentment towards, like, your past self or anything like that? Or what did you have to forgive yourselves of to be able to say, like, okay, now we're going to come together and do this and, you know, come together as the Johnsons?
I think we've grown together a lot as not only a couple, but individuals. I think I came into the marriage feeling like I very much knew who I was and what I wanted, but yet with, I think, some baggage from my past, insecurities, things that I didn't want to share with Tom because I felt like it made me look fragile or pathetic or whatever. We've talked about since then, and I think some of that stuff has to be on the table to move forward in a relationship.
But how would that work out in those situations when you are like, you know, we're in love, you're making out all the time, and you're like,
Naked
hey, we're
Tuesdays. Yeah.
we're just getting married, and how would it work to bring that conversation?
People don't tend to lead with their least admirable attributes.
Right.
Like, hey, I have a history of eating disorders, and I'm kind of a mess when it comes to, you know, insecurities, and like, you just don't necessarily like put your worst foot forward and show it. And then at what point do you show it?
Right.
So I don't know. I think we've grown as a couple and as people, and helped each other through that process.
And I wonder if sometime if and it's different for every different couple, but it would almost be nice if there was a forced day of truth day.
Yeah.
You know, I should impress her with some Spanish now, but I can't think of it. But you know, it like after a certain period of time of like, okay, you're doing this and you're doing things good, you're doing things not good, whatever it might be. But at a certain time in life, for us anyway, it worked incredibly well to have a day of reckoning, and we should come up with a name for that day. Because
Dia de los Reckoning. Impress you with some Spanish.
Dia de los. Get that in the calendar, you guys. But after a certain period of time, you can't go on pretending anymore. You have to be truthful with yourself and with your spouse if you're going to have any higher degree of success. And we've had a couple of those. Say that again.
Dia de los.
Dia de los. I think that has really, if I can give any advice to people, I just think it'd be really hard for everyone to be like, to know everything about this person before you walk down the aisle. I just think that people are afraid of presenting that. And at some point in time, I think you have to release that fear and actually turn it into a strength in yourselves and in your relationship.
Well, and you guys had kind of touched on it too, where you've grown individually also over the course of time. So it's kind of like, what advice would you have for people who are, being in the wedding industry? I interact with a lot of couples, some, older couples, younger couples. It's the younger couples that I'm like, my heart goes out to you, because how do you get to that stage of, if you haven't fully kind of flushed out yourself as a person, to then be growing individually, and then to then be also growing together in your relationship? It kind of is that, like, you want to try and know everything that you can about a person before you get married, but then if you don't even really fully know everything about yourself, that's
a good
point. A difficult thing to do.
And sometimes I think in my case, I know that Tammy allowed me, and she didn't force me, but she allowed me to have that growth and say, looking in the mirror, who are you? Like Zoolander.
Oh yeah.
When he looks at Spoon,
yes.
Who are you?
I'm a model idiot.
She allowed me to have that, and I think that's the probably the important part. I don't know that I would feel comfortable giving that advice that you should do this before you walk down the aisle, because I think that might be more than one can bear in a lot of situations. But at some point in time, when you have that understanding, it's what allows you to grow in your relationship.
Right. I don't want to say that you are the Dr. Tom Wrangler, but you kind of are the Tom Wrangler. So how, like, as a very patient woman, I can only assume, as a also female in a marriage, and to anybody else in a marriage, to be the person who's like, I see so much potential in this person, and you just gotta, like, oh, I'm just here to love you through it. Like, what's kind of your, like, how was that like for you when you are, like, as he was saying, that you gave him the space to just kind of like really fully have these realizations about himself?
I think sometimes when you love and care about somebody, you see in them more than what they see in themselves, or you see their potential, or you see their who they truly are at the root more than they do. And to just allow them the space sometimes to suss that out or figure it out or urge them, sometimes gently, sometimes not so gently.
Yeah, frying pans help a lot.
I don't know. I think any marriage, if you are going to be in it for the long haul, 15 years, 25 years, a lifetime with this person, and actually have a good marriage. And I want to emphasize that, because I think there's a lot of people who have years, but they don't have what I would want as a marriage.
Right.
Like a true friendship, kinship, wanting to actually spend time with this person, adore on them, love on them. I think if you're going to have that, you have to know there's going to be valleys, there's going to be challenges, and that you want to find the strength and the growth in that and the beauty in that. Because if you can get to the other side, it's probably better and better. It's in that you find your resilience and love.
So what's the sauce? What's the secret? If you had to say, like, this is the best advice that you could give to get through for the people who are, because especially, how long have you guys been married? Would it be almost 15 years?
15 years.
15 years?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's no small thing, especially to be able to be 15 years deep, to go through the empty nesting, to go through the losing your parents, to go through, all of these things and figuring out a way to come together. And now you're sitting together on the love couch in front of the love story sign and you're telling your story. How does one get through that, to get to the 15 years and then to do another? I mean, I assume you both are recommitting to another 15 years to get 30 years deep.
One day at a time, dear. Hey, I wanted to interject and answer that question. Hold that thought. I went to a 50th anniversary at a church of mine years ago, and I remembered being, I don't know if it was me and my brother or me and my friend, but we were watching the guy up there, and they were doing a 50-year wedding ceremony, revows, renewing their vows. And the wife was sitting there holding the guy, and 50 years, you could tell they were probably 65, 75 years old. And the guy was just like bawling and crying. Both my brother and I said, is he crying because he's just so happy, or is he crying because he just never got a better spot? So I guess I brought that up. And I think you actually know me, and hopefully you don't, hopefully you appreciate the humor that I have sometimes. And sometimes my humor gets, I put my foot in my mouth more than a few times in my life. But I think that humor has helped us to get through some things and helped us to want to get to the next thing. But sometimes I think you have to be careful not to let humor discard you from truth.
Sure.
So that would be my advice.
Are you looking to me for my secret
There's
sauce?
my secret sauce. What's your sauce? Here's my sauce. This is what it is. Here's my sauce. How about yours?
Is that did you make that up on the spot? That's Dr. T original?
It's an old cheerleading chant, I guess.
You might be texting her later to take that out. I would say, we were talking about this earlier. I think early on in our relationship, and I think it still holds true today, that I just can't imagine life without this person. Good, bad, otherwise. It's the only person I want to do life with.
Sure.
It's the only person from the time we started hanging out, I just couldn't imagine a time of not having him by my side.
That was a mutual thought we had, and we even talked about that consequently many times since then.
'Cause blending families isn't easy.
Yeah.
I think we knew that even second marriages, you have statistics stacked against you. You know, you kind of think, do I want to do this? I just couldn't imagine not doing it. And I think every day I still feel the same way. Like I can't imagine ever not having you by my side. So.
Yeah, I think that was a decision that I think both of us independently made at the time when we were courting, and it wasn't that, man, I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with this smoking hot piece of loveliness and meat, yeah. But it was more that I can't imagine not being able to talk to this person next month or next year, and I think that I kind of remember that there was a time when I was thinking, okay, because I'd had my ways, and I was not committing to anyone before I met her, and I think I remembered looking at her and looking at myself in the mirror and saying, could I possibly continue this method of life and just not really committing to anybody, and just be a single dad and do what I could and have my funds and stuff. And I knew I couldn't imagine not continuing to communicate with her, because even when we were just early courting, there was a communication calmness that she gave to me, and that's something I knew I didn't believe that I could live without that.
Oh, I love that. You guys, I said it at the beginning and I'll say it at the end, you guys are a benchmark relationship, and I'm honored to have had you here on the podcast today.
Wow,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you for listening to the Love Story Podcast. You can subscribe to the show, and you can follow us at the Love Story Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.